Well, we are live. Hello, Amy. Hello, Ellen.
Hey, Morgan. Hey, Amy. And hey, everybody. Morgan, do you want to introduce Amy or do you?
Well, I'll let you introduce Amy.
Okay. Well, Amy is, she has is it a BS or a BA in public health?
Which is BA in public health.
BA in public health. And she has a lifelong history of emotional trauma and physical pain. And hold on. And physical pain, among other things. She, sorry, I'm still working out this. Among other things, she was institutionalized 7 times and attended 6 different schools, high schools as a kid. The pain lodged in her neck and spine, which led to, oh, that's going too fast. Sorry, y'all. It's better just to read it over here. I'm sure it could be slowed down. The pain lodged in her neck and spine, which led to surgeries on those areas, which are, as we all know, very sensitive areas, and you don't want the knife to slip by any means. And on pain meds, she was bedridden during her senior year at college. Her Substack article, Under the Boot, Predictive Coding and Gender Distress. In the article, she talks about predictive coding and opens her article with a story about a man, a nail, and a boot. And it's an interesting story because she said it's a true story that a man was on a construction site, I think it was, and a 15 centimeter nail went through his boot, and everybody around him started hollering and, you know, get him a doctor. And he was just in extraordinary pain. And they get into the hospital or into the ambulance and cut off his boot, and the nail has gone through the boot up in between his toes. It had never penetrated his foot. Nonetheless, his pain was very real. And the fact that the people on the sidelines are going, you know, oh my God, do something, may have factored into it, I think is what Amy says. So she talks about predictive coding in the brain. And then she goes on to say in her article, if this critical misunderstanding, which creates years of disability, medical, shopping, hopelessness, and failed interventions, is unfortunate, its extension into gender medicine is tragic. And so we'll come back to all of that. I just wanted to set the stage a little bit, and people can find the article at, is it Amy Yarin at Substack?
That's a great question. Let me make sure.
That was the initial article. Yeah.
It is Amdura Rose. It's
Amdura Rose.
It's my full name.
Is that your real name, Amdura? Is that your real name?
Yeah.
So pretty.
Thank you.
That is a very beautiful name.
Yeah. So walk us through it. Well, tell me about your child. Tell us all about your childhood and how you came to be institutionalized. And tell us that story, because it's an enlightening one.
Yeah.
And a sad one.
Yeah. So I grew up with I grew up as a highly sensitive child in a home with two parents who I guess I would also call pretty highly sensitive, but didn't have the support or the regulation that they needed to manage that with raising a child. It was just a very volatile house to grow up in, and not one that was kind to the sensitive child that I was growing up. So I started having night terrors as I think like a 3-year-old. I don't remember them. I've been told about them by my dad. I started having really severe panic attacks when I was 8 years old. And I first went under a psychiatric evaluation when I was 8 years old for those panic attacks. I would have them in school. My grade teacher was very authoritarian, and it created this circumstance in which I was at school, and instead of school being a break from my home life, it ended up being a contribution to my stress. And so I felt like there wasn't any space where I got to breathe during the day. And that resulted in me having, the short explanation is that resulted in me having very physical panic attacks. One teacher actually thought I was having a seizure one time that I was having this panic attack. Like, it was very hard to miss. So that resulted in my first psychiatric evaluation, which I passed. And then when I was 14.
And what do you mean you passed?
I didn't get institutionalized at that point.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So
and you were how old at this? You were 8?
I was 8 years old. Yeah. So that's when I first got prescribed psychiatric medication. I was opposed
for the anxiety.
For anxiety. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder at 8 and prescribed Prozac. I was a very sensitive child and a very opinionated child. I had very strong convictions, even as an 8-year-old. I told my parents that I didn't believe in God, which...
And was that an unwise move on your part? Did that contribute to?
They were actually, that's something that they were quite good about. They admitted to me that they were agnostic after I told them. But
okay.
I can imagine it is an interesting experience to hear that from your 8-year-old at the dinner table, but that's what they heard from me.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That is an unusual proclamation, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've only had 2, so I don't know.
I had my spiritual reckoning early. I wouldn't consider myself an atheist anymore, interestingly enough, but at 8 years old I did. And I also told them that I was going to be vegetarian, and I'm still vegetarian.
Oh, wow.
So
you were just knocking down all those those thresholds or those bricks in the wall.
Yeah, I was a child who struggled a lot and was I struggled a lot, but I had a lot of personality. I had a lot of strong convictions. And that wasn't always well received by the people around me. But it's, it's a part of who I am. And so, yeah, I was going through all of these changes. And I think the reason why part of is just like who I am. And I think another part of it is I was struggling enough that I did think about some of these bigger life questions at a very young age. So I was opposed to being on psychiatric medication at 8 years old. I had...
You were or you were not?
I was opposed, yeah.
You were opposed, okay.
Yeah, which I hear about, and I think that this is true to a large degree, is like, these are children, like they don't know what's happening in the world. And I feel like the little 8-year-old inside of me wants to say, I had a pretty good idea. Like, I didn't have, I was still a kid. I didn't have all the knowledge that I have now, but I had the conviction. I don't think that this is the correct path to be taking. I don't want my brain to change. I don't think there's anything wrong with my brain. I know that I'm struggling. I know that my family is difficult that I don't feel like I fit in with my family, and that I feel really stressed at home, and that there's a lot of yelling, and that stresses me out, and all of that. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with my brain. And I remember keeping that, I had to take the medication anyway. It was 8 and I didn't have a choice. And I grew to like it. I started calling it my confidence medicine, which I look back and I'm just so heartbroken that at 8 years old, I was told and reinforced when I said that I need this medication to make me confident. It feels.
Who did you say that to? Your doctor or your parents or?
My parents. I said, this is my confidence medicine.
And how old when you reached that conclusion?
8 or 9.
Oh, you were still 8 or 9. Okay.
I ended up being on that.
Thinking on an 8 or 9-year-old's part.
I was. I definitely was. Yeah, I don't think anyone really knew what to do with me.
Yeah.
And yeah, my anxiety was relatively better for a period of time. In the 7th grade, I transitioned to junior high school, and I struggle with transitions in general, especially as a kid. I think, I don't know, transitions are hard for everyone.
Yeah.
Especially hard for me. So in the 7th grade, I got more diagnoses. I got a diagnosis of ADHD. It was called ADD at the time. It was separated into 2 diagnoses. So I got what is now inattentive ADHD. And they tried me on more medication. Again, I was opposed. They wouldn't let me stop trying. So I had to cycle through and deal with all of the side effects, which were quite severe.
So are you still taking the anxiety medicine as well at this time?
No. Or at that time, no, I guess I was. Yeah, I was. I stopped at 14 taking the anxiety meds, but it wasn't that I stopped meds. It was that they tried me on dozens of more medication.
So what keeps reoccurring? What keeps like spiraling these episodes where you have to go get seen by a doctor or reevaluated? Just the transition between different schools, or?
Yeah, the transition between different schools, the trouble keeping up in my classes. I was really disorganized. I would shove all of my papers into a locker and have my locker explode on me. I was getting overwhelmed in class. I couldn't get from the transition periods between class times. I had trouble getting from place to place. And I attribute some of that to dissociation from the level of stress in my household. I think that's a big part of ADHD for a lot of people, whether they want to admit it or not. Not everyone, maybe, but I think a good portion of us. It's
and can I ask about what year you're talking about? Because I'm curious about the cultural context.
So at 14, in my freshman year of high school would have been 2012.
So we're pretty heavy into the culture of medicalizing children. But also there's some talk about, there are some who are like going for psychological help, but I think there's a lot of, part of the problem now is that the clinician will reach a conclusion prior to actually going into. So in your case, though, you mostly were getting medicalization at this point, drugs. Is that right? So I'm getting from you there was really no effort to look into The noisy household, the chaos, the unhappiness. Yeah.
No, I mean, I was in therapy, but at that age, it was I felt very much it was what's wrong with your child, especially when the parent has that attitude that they want to put the problems onto the kid.
Yeah.
That's the parents are the ones in communication with these professionals, and they have a lot of leverage in steering how the conversation goes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sorry. Was your therapy, was that consistent? Was it the same therapist, or just like the schools you kind of were jumping around?
so the
So,
school started jumping around when I was 14. Up
mm,
until that point, my therapy wasn't particularly consistent. I relied on like school counselors and the occasional private practice. There's no one who stands out to me that I worked with for a long time,
okay.
until I had a therapist who I started seeing when I was 15 years old, who eventually, 14 is when I started getting involuntarily hospitalized. And this therapist was the first person who I felt like was really on my side in all of it and understood everything going on in my home
Mm.
and was willing to
But
help me through it.
did you welcome the institutionalization?
Absolutely not. No.
Well, you did not. Okay.
No.
So so I'm a little confused. The therapist recommended you be institutionalized, and you thought she was the only one on your side?
No. So
Okay.
this therapist, he was the one to eventually aid me in getting out of that institutionalization cycle.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
So it was the last hospital that I would have gotten admitted to, and my mom had driven me to the ER in a fury and said, I'm dropping you off and I'm not going to see you again. Or like, not I'm not going to see you again ever, but like I'm not dealing with you for the next week, was her attitude. And I had just come from therapy. My mom had picked me up. I wasn't old enough to drive.
Mm.
And I called my therapist on the phone, and he was able to speak to the people at the emergency room and convince them to let me go home, which of course was to the same environment because there wasn't another option at the time. So, and that's a whole story I won't get too much into. That was a whole time. But yeah, that was my last institutionalization as a child. So yeah, I had a lot of that background over medicalization. And I'd like to be clear, like I was struggling with my mental health at that time. I don't want to paint a picture like they, I was having panic attacks. I was going through it, but the way that that was handled was insanity.
Mm-hmm.
So then we transition to you undergoing surgeries. How does that come about?
So that was age 20, 24 or 25. I'm 27 now.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up having those surgeries as the result of getting treatment for chronic pain, for severe chronic pain in my college years right after the pandemic.
Mm.
So I already had this medical trauma from childhood. I really resisted medicalization as much as I could at the beginning for my chronic pain, but it was so intensely severe, debilitating, mind-numbing that I felt I eventually had no choice but to go the traditional medical route because I wasn't given any other option. And I was in intense distress, and I don't have any chronic pain anymore, which for a while I never thought I'd be able to say because it was my entire life at one point. And the way that I got there was in spite of the invasive treatments I received rather than as a result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did want to rewind a little bit and just ask for a point of clarification on this, because I'm curious, you know, how you got to your mental state. Would you say that your household was more chaotic and loud and all of that than the average household that's loud and yelling and chaotic? Was it like at next level chaos or?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So that helps.
Absolutely. There is no question about that. Yeah, there's no question about that. My parents were both going through mental struggles of their own.
Gotcha.
And I was parentified a lot.
You were what? What's the word?
Parentified.
Parentified?
Parentified. Like I was made to be, there were periods of time where I felt myself being like a therapist to
Gotcha.
them.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Because of the amount that they were struggling regulating their emotions, outbursts that they would have in public.
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That helps.
And my mom also used institutionalization as a threat, and she would follow through.
Oh.
Yeah. I can only imagine being dropped off at the ER, and that is intense. Mm-hmm. And so you were now in your surgeries years, and you're no longer in your household, I assume. You've moved out, and you were going to were you living in the dorm or?
Yeah, so I moved out at 15 to prevent further institutionalization.
Okay. And you said you got a lawyer at the last one. Yeah.
At 15, okay. I got a lawyer. And I signed myself into state custody to get away from my household and into group homes instead. Mm-hmm. So institutionalization in a different way, but one that wasn't as directly threatening to my well-being. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it wasn't as threatening as being in, I mean, these places had like barbed wire, some of them, like barbed wire. They put children in there, and
it was a group home with barbed wire.
Not the group home. So the group home wasn't like that at all, but it was, for me, a place I could be to guarantee that I wouldn't be put in another acute facility, and those are the ones where it's wired, that type of thing.
Those are like prisons.
Yes, they are essentially prisons.
Yeah. The institutions we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, at that point, I'm in college. I am living on my own in an apartment. My parents were helping me with rent, which is the reason I got to stay there while I was going through all of that. So a bit of credit, I guess, there in their direction. They were supporting me so that I was able to have a place to stay when going through all this. Mm-hmm. And so my pain started. I had experienced back pain. First time I had back pain when I was like 8 years old, but it wasn't anything severe. It was just like, we'll get her in physical therapy. It's like, it wasn't a big deal. That changed when it changed for the most part right before starting my last semester of college. So I had been working at a retail job. I really adored my job. I was having the best time. I had good friends. I was finally felt like I was living a life that I wanted to live. Mm-hmm. And things seemed to be coming together. And I thought, I think I'm going to return to school. I have 1 semester left. That's all. I just need 1 semester and I'll get my degree. I think it was 2 days before the last semester started. I went to bend down in the shower.
Mm.
My back gave out.
Mm.
And it really gave out. I immediately had to get down on the floor. I had to army crawl to the door of my apartment. I lived alone.
Mm.
To try to reach up to the best of my ability to unlock the door to let the EMS in.
Yeah.
So that's how much it gave out. And being myself, I said, okay, I'm gonna fix this and I'm gonna start college. That's my plan, so I'm doing it. And I did. And I finished my semester. Nearly killed me, but I did it. I was in class with ice packs and it was a challenge. It was a real challenge, but I managed to the best that I could and I passed and graduated. I understand now that that episode that I had of an acute flare was not physical at all, but it gave
not due to physical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But everything pointed in that direction.
Right. Right. Okay, so you told me you were bedridden for about a year in college. So the episode with your back and the shower, this was before or after you were bedridden?
This was before. So I completed my semester. I completed that semester in a lot of pain, a lot of pain, but the pain got even worse right after graduating. And that's when I was bedridden. And I couldn't have completed that school at that point. I wasn't able to do anything.
Right. Okay. Gosh.
So when do you start turning to the corner and you kind of are experiencing that some of these ailments that you're experiencing might be deeper than just, muscle and tissue and something's not working right and we got to make surgery to get it fixed?
Yeah. So at the beginning of the chronic pain journey and pursuing medical treatment for it, I had asked at least one practitioner, hey, I know that there's an association between chronic pain and trauma. I know that people have spoken about that a lot. I think that my chronic pain could be trauma related. Not in a million years did I think that it was the sole cause. And I guess you could argue that it's the entire cause was psychological. So it was after going through countless invasive medical procedures over that period of time, including heavy prescriptions of opioids, benzodiazepines, you name it, at the same time, contraindicated medications that just kept piling on. And in that state of desperation, it just like gender distress, it takes on a mind of its own. And you begin to lose sight of where you're going because you are obsessive at finding a solution. And I was obsessed with finding a solution. And I look back and I can't judge myself because I can't see it happening any other way. I needed something. And eventually, after all of that, I got one final diagnosis out of what has totaled to around 30, which is crazy.
30 diagnoses?
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
And among them were?
Among them were anxiety, depression, PTSD, also herniated disc. What's it called?
Something in your neck.
Yeah, like herniated disc. They saw that I had congenital fusions of my spine. I was diagnosed with arthritis. I don't have arthritis, but I was diagnosed with arthritis. Scoliosis. Like,
holy cow.
and then a bunch of random other things that I've gotten throughout my lifetime, like asthma. Not asthmatic, but I was effectively asthmatic at that point. Like, it was presenting as asthma, and might have been asthma, but I don't have it anymore.
And when we were talking, you really made the point. I may have used the word, or somehow it came up, psychosomatic, and that is not what that's not where you're going.
Yeah.
The mental problem. Go ahead. Yeah, you expound on it, because.
Yeah. So in essence, these things are psychosomatic. People don't use psychosomatic when talking about these things because of the connotation it has of being off your head. So, and that's what I thought of psychosomatic before I was educated about this stuff, before going through it myself and understanding on the other side, of like, if someone's experiencing something psychosomatic, it's like they're delusional and it's in their head and they're experiencing something, but it's not real. And these symptoms and pain are not only extraordinarily real and visceral, they're also not uncommon. It's not the odd person who has a history of trauma who is experiencing these things. It is a process that happens on some level to every single living person on the planet. So, you know, for some people, it's been worse, but it happens to everyone. So, like, an example of a psychosomatic process is crying when you see something that's sad. It's a physical process that manifests from psychological input, or having a stomach ache before getting on stage. That's another thing that can be considered psychosomatic. So the term that I use in the article is psychophysiological, which is synonym, but it's just a way of rebranding. But also neuroplastic is something that's commonly used, like the Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms, the ATNS, and also mind-body conditions. So there are a few different terms that people use now. Psychosomatic really isn't one of them, but it's the same thing. So that issue of, like, you know, you feel it in your stomach, that adrenaline or the stomach ache before you get on stage, it's a normal human phenomenon, but it becomes an issue when it doesn't go away and it starts feeding into itself in a feedback loop. Just as, like, say, like, for gender distress, there's probably not, maybe there is one lucky person on the planet who's never felt any sort of gripe or insecurity about the way that they look or that they belong in society. They've never had any anxiety about that. But for most of us, we've felt anxious about belonging, or we've felt anxious about a body part that doesn't feel aligns with who we are, but it's not taking over our lives.
Yeah. I think I wanted to mention this. I think I mentioned it to you when we were talking on the phone, and it's about me, but the point of telling it is to reinforce what you're saying. And I had never thought about it this way, but I mentioned to you, and I think Morgan knows, that my 16-year-old daughter and her boyfriend were killed very suddenly in a very powerful crash. And time went by and I started developing pain in my body. And so I was sent to physical therapy. And when I got there, the man at the desk said, "We seldom see somebody presenting with needing therapy in their shoulder, their back, and their knee at the same time." And he asked me, he said, "Were you in a wreck?" And of course, I wasn't in a wreck, but I was in impacted by that wreck, and that made the question to me stuck in my mind. It was just so curious to me. But I mean, you could say, yeah, it was psychosomatic, but it was real pain and from a real cause, and I hadn't put the two things together. So anyway, just to reinforce what you're saying about that, it makes a lot of sense to me. So, okay, I interrupted. You were going down. Where were we, Morgan?
I think super, super relevant.
Thank you.
I think we were kind of just now brushing upon it, but the connection of what you experience and how you're kind of witnessing, gender care being taken today. That's kind of what we just now brushed upon, and that's like to see how you kind of made that connection, why you feel compelled to speak out about that, given like what's happened to you.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think made it challenging to come to the conclusion that my pain had a psychological origin rather than a structural one. There are a lot of things that made that hard, including doctors telling me that they were 100% certain that it was structural, and dozens of doctors at that, and seeing scans and all sorts of stuff. So I can get into that later. But one of the main things that made it really hard to come to terms with was just how many people were mistaken. Professionals were mistaken. Skeptic by nature, and I was, I went in with that attitude. And I knew that they were not perfect in what they were doing, but I didn't realize that they could be that wrong about everything.
Right.
It's a terrifying conclusion to come to, and I understand people who don't want to go there because it's kind of terrifying. I had already witnessed a lot of my friends from high school identifying differently, undergoing gender transition. I had already noticed that some of the things that brought us together in the first place were having home lives or being queer or not straight. Some of the similarities that we shared.
Not straight, but also queer in terms of, unusually artistic and, all of these different personalities and then we don't look at that and say, you're just a plain gay boy. You're just a very cool artist with a very unusual interest in this, that, and the other that's coming out in your art,
Yeah.
No need for a double mastectomy.
Right. We're just people who have, birds of a feather who have flocked together. And I noticed that my flock was increasingly questioning their gender, including positing to me that maybe I might be transgender because I started talking about having masculine elements in me. To be honest, I had questions from the very beginning, and I witnessed it spreading around me, and I kept asking questions, and no one could really answer them in a way that was satisfying to me. And I saw things like a woman at I don't want to reveal too much personal information, but a woman that I knew in young adulthood, wasn't close with, who ended up having a celebration for her double mastectomy, including like some version of pin the tail on the donkey that was gender related. And
and what age was this? If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to be too specific. Just what age were you still in high school, or is this more in college years?
Early 20s.
Early 20s.
Yeah. And
these are people you had gone to high school with or
college.
College.
But also I've seen similar things in my high school peer group.
Okay.
So Oh no, you're good. So as I was reflecting on all of the treatments that I was given, in strong quotes, treatments, really invasive stuff, pretty horrific stuff. I don't want to get into too much detail here, but really invasive things, including surgery, that all of which lacked an evidence base, some of which I realized as I was going through it contradicted each other, the treatments. Like there was no sense behind a lot of what they were doing to me, and they were doing pretty extreme things to me in an effort to get this pain to go away and fill their pockets, frankly. And I started seeing the overlap between what's happening with the amount of surgeries that I saw online and in my peer group, and some of the same gripes that people had with some of the same distress, underlying distress that people were expressing alongside being in distress about their gender and wanting to transition. I noticed that they had a lot of the same mental health issues and were sometimes really open about that and gave insight into that. And if anything, I see a lot of it in myself, a lot of overlap.
Like in how they would talk, you would find similarities, and is that what you mean?
Yeah, and in the relentless pursuit of a solution, and there is a structural alteration when the problem, I think it's more clear in the case of gender distress that the problem is with identity, so therefore it has to do with emotion. Maybe it's not as clear cut to everyone. Some people are firmly like there's a mismatch between brain and body. Chronic pain also feels like a mismatch between brain and body. And the treatment for that being these invasive procedures, which also something that caught my attention was people who I was in close proximity to, who I saw undergo these procedures and it not resolve what they were feeling. And I knew what that was like.
And
that's what it's all about. You go ahead,
pardon
Ellen.
me, Morgan?
You go ahead, Ellen. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I think you mentioned there's part of the discussion now is social contagion.
Yeah.
And I mean, would you use that phrase, or do you, I mean, I'm getting from you that you do, but I mean, a lot of people will say, you know, no, it's not social contagion. They really were born in the wrong body.
Yeah, that was actually, I was like, I forgot about that. That's a big part of it, is the social contagion. So thanks for, reminding me of that. So social contagion, this might seem a little bit out of left field. I always feel the need to preface that a little bit, but back pain, from what I know now and my experiences, is also a social contagion. And it's so my mom had neck and back pain as a kid. My dad also had back pain growing up. I was surrounded with a lot of people with spinal issues. There was always an explanation, you know, I'm old, or I have scoliosis, or I have a desk job and that hurts me. Or
I spent too much time in the fields, bent over, you know.
Yeah.
Picking up watermelons and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
There's a structural reason that people can attribute to it every single time.
Right.
I had one too. I was like, I bent down in the shower and my back gave out. Like, what do you want me to tell you? That's what happened.
Yeah. So, by the way, the watermelon, that's probably a terrible, because I think that really would lead to.
If you pick it up improperly too many times.
Let's just cut that out. Yeah, we'll clip that out. No, we won't. We'll leave it in. But I
want to challenge that a little bit.
Okay. All right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So we have this cultural idea that we have to pick things up properly, and it is very, very ingrained. And that if we pick things up improperly, then we could end up in a lot of pain and disabled, which is not to say that it never, ever happens. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you pull your ACL, sometimes you get injuries, but when those injuries become lifelong or like months or years, that points to 99% of the time something happening in the brain.
Yeah.
So, and oftentimes it does stem from something physical. Not every time, but sometimes. So, in the example of back pain, let's say someone really does hurt their back. They get into a car accident. They really hurt their back. It's the way that it perpetuates over time, that an acute injury has a period of healing and then it goes away. If it stays, then the brain has really solidified that connection. That neural network has been solidified and it begins to serve a different purpose than the original acute cause of the pain, which is I'm giving you this pain signal so that you can know to rest and heal or get the medical intervention that you need to get. But let's say you have that, you get the medical intervention, you rest it, and then maybe you have a period where it's not there, and then 3 years down the line, you're like, oh my God, my back. And nothing happened. It's just you're like, oh, well, I was in that car accident 3 years ago. But something did happen. You just didn't realize what happened. And that something that happened is some sort of life stress.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask
Go ahead.
the transition that you have to now you're not in chronic pain anymore. What does that look like? What kind of, hobbies do you indulge in? What transition did that look like? Because I wouldn't say it was just a light switch moment where you had this idea and then all the pain just went away. It would have to be this kind of this mental battle, because if it's in your brain is a very powerful muscle. It wants to go right back to what you've been doing. So kind of want to hear about that transition.
Yeah. So my last diagnosis that I received was a diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is very popular right now for doctors to give out and for people to seek. So
Goodness. What is it again?
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Ehlers-Stan. How do you spell it?
Ehlers. Should I write it in the chat?
Yeah, you can just write it in the private chat if you want, or in the comments to everybody.
Yeah, because it's a diagnosis going around, but I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
This probably has to do with my age. You know what I mean?
It's particularly popular among younger people, and it involves real
Ehlers-Danlos. Okay. And that's your latest diagnosis.
So this is when I got admitted overnight to the hospital at the end. And I had been really, really trying to get an overnight admission. I succeeded. They brought in a bunch of doctors to analyze me and come up with something that was going to help me, because I hadn't been helped before and I'd been through so many treatments and everything. So they gave me this diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos, and they were very proud of like, oh, we found the thing. It's just this rare connective tissue disorder that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I had already heard of it. And it has to do with like hyperflexibility, which I am hyperflexible. But the idea is like, if you are hyperflexible and you have pain, then you might have Ehlers-Danlos, and it might be something wrong with your connective tissue. And that is why you're experiencing this pain. So there's a lot in the chronic pain world, just as in the gender world, of there being an issue of correlation versus causation. So
Yeah.
This was what I was told. You have a connective tissue disorder. This must be why you have pain.
Mm-hmm.
What drove me to question that was that there was no proposed solution. So it was like, here, it must be because you have this rare condition. Be on the merry way.
Everybody's got a rare condition now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes it almost impossible to understand or to get at a solution if it's that rare,
Yeah. So a lot of people are being diagnosed with this. I see it constantly in comments online, like, well, maybe you should look into Ehlers-Danlos. You might have this thing.
So that's an interesting thing right there. It's rare, yet it's being diagnosed abundantly, or far more than a rare case here or there. But continue.
So because there was no proposed solution and it didn't totally make sense to me, it was really that I was at the end of my rope at this point. And I was a long time ago, but in order to, I woke up with the idea of a mind-body connection in my head, which is something that I had dismissed over 6 months prior when I went into this medical spiral. And I woke up with that idea in my head. I had exhausted at this point. I had been through every opioid except for fentanyl. I wouldn't let myself touch fentanyl. I was offered it. I was like, that's the limit. I don't go to fentanyl. But I went everything up until that point above oxy. Like, it was crazy. Someone in their mid-20s. So I was... I had no options left. I had just gone to a ketamine clinic. They had denied me because I was on Dilaudid, which, shout out to that ketamine clinic. Thank you. Because that would have been so crazy. I had enough craziness going on. So I'd exhausted every option. I had exhausted every diagnosis. And I woke up with the idea of the mind-body connection in my head. I put it into YouTube. I found an interview with this woman named Gigi Cockell, who is... she got her degree in biology from the University of Oxford, or Oxford University. And that gave me some pause of like, okay, this is like someone with credibility, for better or for worse. I needed that at the time. And she started talking about her own story because she was also diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos and how she recovered using psychological techniques. And through watching that video, I felt my symptoms change in my body while I was watching.
Interesting. And to what do you attribute that? Just you're at the point where you needed something that made sense, or?
Yeah, she answered questions that I'd had and had proposed to doctors who were not able to answer. And so when the brain gets that input of safety, I had been shown countless scans. I'm like dozens of MRI scans showing this is wrong with your spine here. This is wrong with your spine there. You have this diagnosis, Ehlers-Danlos. This is wrong. This is wrong. You need all of this. And to hear someone say, this is what's happening, it gave my brain a safety signal that with predictive coding, I was able to recalibrate what was happening in that moment. That wasn't a permanent fix. I didn't like watch the video and go on my merry way and like I'm healed, but it was enough of a sign that my pain was able to lift by watching a video, which obviously if you have something wrong with your spine, it's not going to change by watching a video.
Yeah. So almost was kind of like a light switch. I didn't expect it. I thought it was going to be more of a slow process of you kind of reconciling. That's very interesting. And what was this video again, if you don't mind me asking?
So it was an interview that Gigi Cockell did with Dan Buglio about neuroplastic pain healing.
Okay. And is she providing kind of remedies within this podcast or this interview, or okay, she is?
Yeah.
And so you're kind of probably seeing that more of as a reprieve than the doctors just telling you that they gave you a new label for whatever you had, the pain.
Yeah. So one thing that she said was she had one of the light bulb moments for her in her own journey was she had a chronic UTI symptom. Wasn't actually a UTI, but it was Ellen, you look shocked.
Oh my gosh. Well, my husband had a prostatectomy surgery, and it's been it hasn't done anything to help him. And he has been to the doctors, called the doctors and all that repeatedly. And one of the things they keep telling him is that he has a UTI, and it doesn't get better with antibiotics. He's in a lot of pain. And so when you said that, I was just like, holy cow. Interesting, because that's what we talk about a lot around here.
Yeah.
Is this chronic? It's like,
so bladder pain, pelvic pain. Pelvic pain is a huge, what we call in the world of mind-body stuff, we call it the symptom imperative. So all of these things being symptom imperatives. So back pain, symptom imperative. You get some treatment done on your back that you really believe in. You go to physical therapy to work on your back, and you really believe in that physical therapist. You have a placebo effect from it. Your back is now good, but now you have migraines. So it's one symptom switching from the next when the underlying cause isn't treated, because the brain is still trying to find a way to protect you, and pain is a protective mechanism. So bladder pain is a very common symptom imperative. It's one that Gigi talked about having. She begged her doctor for antibiotics. Begged. They said, she was diagnosed with, what's it called? Interstitial cystitis. And because they did the testing for the UTI and it didn't come up as, it wasn't a positive test result, but the pain wouldn't go away. And so she begged for antibiotics. She's in the UK, so they're a bit stricter about that kind of thing. She finally got the antibiotics. She took them, and within 2 minutes or 30 minutes or like some short period of time, her pain went from a 10 to a 2, or like I think she says like a 15, which I know how that feels, to a 2. And being a scientist, she said, there's no way that that's possible. And I had that same experience. So that was one of the things that in the video really spoke to me. I had taken some opioid medication. It was like barely down my throat, and I was like, I felt better.
Can you put her name and the video in the chat?
Yeah.
I'll see if we can get these into the show notes.
And she is brilliant. Gigi Cacao. The interview that I watched was one of 2 that she has with Dan Buglio.
Okay, I'll definitely check that. That's very, very interesting. I know we're nearing the end of the show. Your story is really incredible. A lot of people probably are experiencing the same thing. And I think with, the gender care, we see a lot of people that are falling into this trap where you kind of alluded to it. They just want this immediate fix of some kind of issue. And this insatiable chase of trying to find that remedy. So you speaking out on this is really, really important. And Ellen, I want to pass it to you. I know that we're nearing the end of the show. So
I did want to be sure to read this statement from your article talking about gender distress. And you said the core problem is that gender distress is now treated as the most literal, unquestionable truth about the self. So literal that the proposed solution is invasive bodily modification. And another question I have for you, and if you have an opinion on this or if you thought about it, is there also a connection to how much money is being made in our healthcare system? In other words, do you think if you went to, a place where they have a national healthcare system and maybe more interest in what's going on with people's mental health and bringing that together in the same place? I know, like we lived in Indonesia for a while, and they would have the idea that this is so random and off topic, but like if somebody were sound asleep and you wanted to talk to them, you would knock on the door very, 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 very quietly, so their spirit would have time to get back into their body before they were jolted awake. I mean, it's a whole different way of looking at spirit, soul, body. And then, of course, you have cultures like, where, I don't know, what we're told about some other cultures where there's an emphasis on what's going on, that there is more emphasis on the connection between what happens with your body and what happens with you spiritually or, traumatically and all of those things. I don't know. Do you have a thought on that, or is that just me chasing rabbits?
On Can you?
So yeah, so if you like detach the monetary incentive in the medical professional field that you sometimes can allude to seeing in like the United States, do you think that plays a major role in kind of facilitating just this endless procedures and diagnoses, and then what we see today with the gender studies? Does that kind of summarize your question, Ellen?
Yeah, because I mean, from what I understand, for example, somebody videoed doctors at Vanderbilt University talking about how much money there is to be made in gender surgeries on children. I mean, they were blatant about how much money is to be made. And, Al and I both, we're like, no matter how much we may like the doctor personally and think of him or her as a friend potentially, we're so aware that they're sending us to specialists that they don't really know anything about other than that on a list. And and you say, what about this and this? And you just get this blank stare, or it's just, so I mean,
I think
that's one of the things that you point up, is that there's a problem in the system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that financial gain is a huge motivator. I've been to the conference, the largest mind-body conditions, like chronic conditions treatment through mind-body means conference twice, and they talk a lot about this, and it's very parallel, I see, to things like organizations like GenSpect, where they're holding up all of these doctors who have these purported cures and saying like they're making so much money off of this, and that's obviously a motivator. I don't think that it's like pure like evil intentions, although there are a few where I have
suspicion. Yeah.
Including some that I've been treated by, but I think for the most part these people are susceptible to being swayed by financial motives because they think they're doing the right thing.
Well, and that's one of the other things you had to say in your article, and you drew this little cartoon, and you say over here you've got Jen Specht talking about, the problems with the gender movement, and over here you have the plastics. Who is it?
It's kind of a mouthful. It's the Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms.
Right, and they're both looking at this problem, but they're not communicating and not getting more. But I want to say I cannot. So one of our friends dropped by, whose name is Warren Dearman, and he has a podcast that I really, really like, and I'm going on his podcast tomorrow. And he's invited me to come because I don't know if you're aware of the charges that have been brought against the Southern Poverty Law Center.
I know about their labeling of Jen Specht, but I don't know about the charges, I don't think.
Yeah. So the Southern Poverty Law Center is like the blue ribbon, justice-oriented organization, and it's based in Montgomery, Alabama. And, we Alabamians have been very proud of it. And but the problem is I lost confidence in them with all of their promotion of these hate groups. Now I see that you can talk about the Klan as being a hate group or the Aryan Nation as being a hate group, but they put Jen Specht on their hate as a right-wing hate group, along with the Society for Evidence-Based Medicine. It's preposterous.
Yeah.
Preposterous. So I come at it knowing a little bit about the Southern Poverty Law Center and a little bit about Jen Specht, and I'm like, but it raises money. It raises money.
Yeah. Yeah, following the money is often pretty pretty good approach.
Follow the money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the additional kind of assessment as well is it's part of I wouldn't say it's only strictly American culture, but it predominantly American Western culture of this insatiable need to find the quick cure, the quick fix. Which I think that has kind of taken over the medical industry, so much so that I don't think that doctors necessarily per se have this ill intent. Yeah. They really kind of have this culture that's in bed with them, with going to school and they want to label the patient, the problem with the patient, so they can treat the patient and have a badge for that in a sense. It doesn't have to be that vain of a project, but you kind of get what I'm trying to say. So that's what I would also make the addition now, as well as it's also this cultural issue as well when we're facing just this insatiable need to kind of get the next fix and then the next cure.
Yeah, I think especially as so much of the population is suffering from something related to this, they not only see opportunity, but they see a need, and they're pushed to come up with a solution before they understand the problem. Mm-hmm. And that's huge with chronic pain. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it's the majority of Americans are experiencing some sort of chronic pain, have experienced some sort of chronic pain, because it's such a wide-ranging thing. Like, I'm talking even things that aren't necessarily super pain related, like IBS, chronic conditions like IBS, migraines, recurring bladder pain, like back pain, neck pain, carpal tunnel, all of these things that it's not a panacea, but it's almost a panacea, because these things all have a mind-body origin. They are the result of a dysregulated nervous system that's being influenced by the emotions that a person has that they feel unable to face. It's a very human phenomenon that this is happening to so many people, and it's so broad-reaching, and they can all be healed by addressing the underlying emotional stuff that's happening by addressing the conditioning that's being brought forth by doctors. So part of the reason why I, in my experience, had that such a quick light bulb moment, not to say that that was what the entirety of my healing journey looked like, but there was that initial spark that not everyone has. The reason why, I think, is because I was fed so much misinformation by the medical system, including scans where they said, here, look, this is what your spine looks like, and that's where your pain is. Therefore, that's got to be the problem. That I was fed so much misinformation that when I had, that was because we're very suggestible creatures, all of us, that I internalized because it came from a medical authority.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is information that was then contradicted, clicked in me because I had enough background knowledge already. And that was able to be undone in that moment. Whereas the emotional stuff behind it took more processing. So part of what was contributing to the symptoms was the emotional stuff, and part of it was this conditioning and suggestibility from doctors telling me things that was able to be undone quickly because it wasn't anything I emotionally had to work through. So it depends on where this influence is coming from. And I think for everyone, it's a mix. Just depends on what the mix looks like. So I think when they have this much of the population who's going through this much distress in all sorts of different forms, they feel it's business for them. And they are coming up with solutions before they understand the problem because it's so pervasive, I think, is a huge part of it.
Yeah. And so we do need to wrap it up. I don't want to wear you out but I mean, I think what you have to say is just incredibly important. And I guess the only other thing I popped into my mind is like, if you get it back to the core problem of family dysfunction and loud and chaos, then you've got to go even beyond that to how do we get to this place where so many people are miserable in their own homes, you know? And and it's too much. Just give me a pill. Just give me a pill.
Mhm.
But
Exactly.
you're doing such great work, and I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you both on the phone and today. You really are bringing a lot to the table. And so can people find you anywhere other than your new Substack? You don't have a website or anything like that?
No, I that's kind of my next step, I think. Yeah, first, thank you, and same to you. But yeah, I think I'm going to have a website soon. For now, the best place to find me would be on Substack. And I already have an interview on a Mind Body podcast if you're interested in learning more about that.
Well, yeah. Put it in the chat, write it down in the chat, and then we'll put it in the show notes.
So now that I have like one article in progress and 2 podcast interviews, I'm like, maybe I can make a website.
That's awesome. Well, be sure to keep in touch with us.
Yes.
And
Sean Hershey. Mind Body. I want to make sure I spell it correctly. It's one word. Mind Body Medicine with Sean Hershey. So Sean Hershey, who interviewed me, is a therapist who works with clients on mind-body illnesses.
you know what? I need to figure out, because this goes away. So how can I copy this, Morgan. Put it somewhere where I really can.
You put it in a banner.
Well, a banner. Oh, yeah. The banners don't go away. That's right. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4.
So I put it right here. So this is the show you'll be on. And what was the date that you'll be on it?
I was already on it.
Oh, you're already on it. Pardon me.
I did my interview in, was it October, November, something like that. It has my name attached to it. So if you put in Amy Yarin.
You know what? You can just send me an email and I can get that into the show notes.
Okay. Yeah.
That might be the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah. Also, Dr. Sarno, I never mentioned Dr. Sarno, but he is considered the pioneer of mind-body science. He was not taken seriously by his medical peers and really still isn't by the majority of the medical community. Both of these communities are on the fringe, which is part of why I'm like, we need to work together, guys. It's like the same thing. The mainstream is like censoring both of us. And I believe we're fighting for the same thing. The same problem has the same solutions that are being totally mistreated. So
yeah, well, and people are up against these big, powerful forces, and it doesn't make any sense not to come together and at least have a good understanding of what the other group is about, not be so siloed.
Yeah. So
absolutely. Anyway, we really are going to have to let you go. This has been wonderful. Yes, and do stay in touch and do send me all this stuff in an email and I'll get it in the show notes.
I will.
And hope everybody enjoyed it and hope you all will come back next week. Next week, we are talking with a woman whose daughter was taken from her by the state of California.
I saw that.
Alexandra. And I mean, it's just because she wouldn't affirm the gender ideas of her daughter. So there's so much going on here. And
there really is.
So, yes. All right. Well, good night. Good night, Amy. Good night, Morgan. And good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.